Welcome to the H12 Prep Baseball Report. I'm Ramon Scott. I'm joined as always by EastCountySports.com's Dave Dickens. And joining us this week for our season recap and playoff preview, members of the West Hills Wolfpack, senior COLTON CORDERMAN, and sophomore Andrew RITAYIK. Dave, the Wolfpack earned a fourth place finish in the Grossmont Valley League this season, winning 6 games and finishing the season pretty strong, 8 wins and 10 losses over the final part of the season. They fell short of making the playoffs this season for the second straight year, but I think with some young talent, things are looking up for the Wolfpack despite that finish.
You know, you're right, and the fourth place finish, I don't think, errors do kill you when it comes to these types of games, especially when you're facing teams like Helix. Now, would you say, Andrew, that the strength of schedule was a disadvantage to you this year? I mean, were you playing teams that were in a higher division, more of those teams than, say, below you?
I think that there were some teams that were over our head, like Helix, for example, but I think that a lot of the teams, we had the capability of competing with them and had a chance to put up a good fight against them.
Now let's just touch on it real shortly. After making these key errors that could have lost you some of these ball games, what was Mickey D? What was his reaction? Say you missed a fly ball or you missed a sharp ground ball up the middle. What would be his typical words to a player such as yourself or Colton over here?
Well, he'd kind of yell at you a lot for making an error. If it was something that you couldn't control, then, you know.
Pretty animated if you could have made the play?
Yeah.
And any extra laps you'd have to run or extra batting practice or anything like that?
No, he would just yell and scream at you.
That would be Mickey, with the Stars. He probably does the same thing. How about you, Colton? You have anything to say about that as far as how it is to work with Mickey in the dugout?
Oh, it's great to work with Coach Mick. He knows so much about baseball. Whenever you're around him, every time I'm around him at least, I learn something new about the game that I didn't know before. He's a great coach.
And you were with him all 4 years?
No, my freshman year we had a different head coach, but he was there my sophomore, junior, and this year.
So he taught you a lot, but from what you spoke to Ramon and myself earlier, you actually, this was your last baseball game that you'll actually play organized-wise of your career. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you were telling us you were going to
San Diego State next year. I'm going to study civil engineering.
Great, that's great. And what, if you don't mind me asking, what was the final GPA?
I had a 3.95 cumulative.
Wow, impressive. Well, I mean, at least you have a plan for your future. Unfortunately, not athletics, but fortunately you have a good academic plan for the future. Ramon?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Colton to maybe be my West Hills analyst here and talk about some of these younger players because, as I said, the Wolfpack do seem to have a pretty big future with some good players and some young pitching talent too. Guys like Gavin Condra and Peyton Honick and Cody Pedrero. Colton, what do you see in some of those guys and some of the younger players that the Wolfpack have developing?
Yeah, we're a young team. It was a good year for us, maybe not record-wise, but everyone learned so much, all the young guys. There's some guys with some real potential that could definitely go on and play at the next level.
Drew, we had some exciting wins this year, some walk-offs. I think of the win over Coronado, the win over Montgomery, some other nice league wins over the Matadors and the Braves. Certainly building on winning those games have to be what this team is looking forward to.
Yeah, we definitely needed some of those wins, kind of get some experience at the varsity level. So, and again, our team's really young, so
Yeah, and you mentioned those walk-ups. I remember you got the revenge against Coronado after you beat him the first time. You came back and dogpiled in that game, and Gavin hit the big walk-off home run later in the season. Yeah, you hit 276 this year as a sophomore, and boy, we were standing in the lobby of the studio here and can't help but notice you're 6'2", pretty imposing guy and still growing. So you also delivered a complete game win on the mound, and you're not really known as a pitcher. You beat Mount Miguel a couple weeks back. So what do you think of your potential going forward and the Wolfpack's potential with your young teammates heading into next year?
I think that next year we're going to be a lot better. We didn't have very many returning varsity guys that came back and played. So I think that this year, after our year of experience that we've got, we're going to be a lot better next year.
And can you, Andrew, you want to speak on the play of Kai Dennis? He seemed to be one of your outstanding sophomores this season and contributed in a lot of the games, both offensively and defensively.
Yeah, Kai he's a great hitter, and it helps that he is really fast. So just like a little ground ball somewhere, he can beat it out.
A couple of stolen sacks.
Yeah.
And that always helps. Now does I don't know about previously, but does Coach Mickey like to play small ball typically instead of trying to drive the ball out of the park?
It depends on the occasion. If it's like first couple innings and just want to get the lead early, try to get hits. But if it's later on in the game, close game, then start to play some small ball.
So Kai would definitely be the guy that you'd want to be on base, of course, and pick up a couple of stolen bases and try and bunt him in, sack fly, and win that ball game. So he'd be somebody that he would call on for that, correct?
Yeah.
Perfect. So he'll be one of the young returners that definitely will be part of the foundation for the West Hills Wolfpack next year, right?
Yeah. He'll help us out next year.
Now, one thing else I noticed is that Drew drew 15 walks this year, and so I think that people are seeing his potential at the plate a little bit, especially in a lineup that didn't really hit maybe up to their potential this year, hitting the low 200s, and maybe Drew didn't see all the pitches that he was intended to get, that he might get once the Wolfpack grows a little bit and increases that batting average. Yesterday, the Wolfpack lost 10-2 to Steel Canyon. Steel Canyon was probably a little upset, missing out on the playoffs, took it out on these guys, but I'll mention on Tuesday, Peyton Honick pitched a 4-hitter to beat the Mount Miguel Matadors. That had to be a highlight. Know that you were going to go in and maybe have a competitive game, win that game, and I think it just shows how strong this pitching staff was, Colton. I mentioned guys like Condra and Honick and Pedrero, but I want to mention pitching coach Dave Palais. I think people know him as a popular sports commentator here locally, and boy, he's been doing it over 20 years. But I think more significant contribution by Dave is his work with young men in baseball programs with the West Hills Wolfpack and with the California Bears, of course. What do you guys know about Dave and what he does in his work with mostly with pitchers, but as a baseball coach?
Yeah, Dave's a great coach. He knows a lot about the game. He's great with us, knows how to talk to us. He's a great coach.
Drew, you probably worked a little bit with Dave. You got your one start and you had 2 other appearances. And I don't know, Colton touted you more as a hitter and maybe not as a pitching prospect. When I look at your frame, I see a menacing presence on the mound. I'd probably want to work with you a little more. What about Dave and pitching?
Yeah, I did work with Dave. Not too much, just because I didn't pitch that much, but when I did work with him, it was great. So I learned some stuff from him.
So is that something, Andrew, that you're considering in the future? Have you spoken with Coach Mickey and Coach Dave regarding pitching and possibly being, even if it starts with relief?
I wouldn't really mind pitching too much, but I pitched a lot in Little League and through juniors, and I just kind of got burned down on it. So.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have any arm injuries or anything like that, did you? Or
no.
Just kind of got old and wore on you a little bit to where you thought, I should play out in the field, maybe play behind the dish a little bit?
Yeah.
Should be noted, Dave, that West Hills finished with an ERA around 3.25, 3.3. So I think that the errors hurt him a little bit, but the pitching was there and we just didn't produce enough offense. But I do want to mention a little tidbit, Dave, you're going to find really interesting. This is that little tidbit we learned that Drew was the youngest player to ever take an at-bat with Mickey D's San Diego Stars semi-pro baseball team. The youngest batter ever. I mean, we're not talking about some semi-pro team that just sprung up overnight. I mean, the San Diego Stars have been in existence for a long, long time, as long as Mickey's been doing it, right? From RV trips all over the country to faraway places, and that was neat for Drew. But I want to tease him a little bit. He struck out on a serious curveball, he said, but then looking to get a little revenge, went chasing at a high fastball later on. I think when Mickey gets you back on the Stars, you'll be ready next time, and with more plate discipline for those guys.
Yeah.
And you, also, Drew, you played with Next Level youth program. Tell me about your experience with Next Level.
Mickey was the head coach, so it was really fun. We played with a lot of the guys from West Hills, so kind of started to bond earlier in the season.
Dave's 6'3", and he's chasing high fastballs. I think we're going to work on Drew a little bit on the discipline when he gets hitting out of his shoes against all the older players.
And Andrew, how does that? I mean, I'm sure it gives you a lot of help, but how does that make you feel too? That you have the ability to work out with a team like the Stars?
It's great that I have the ability, and being able to work out with those guys, seeing their talent level makes me work harder to push to compete with them and to try to get as good as they are.
And are you looking? I mean, I know it's early. You got 2 more years to think about at West Hills, but is this something that, I mean, like Ramon mentioned, you have the frame to continue, especially to play the game of baseball. Are you interested in taking it a step further, at least into the college section?
Yeah, of course. I want to try to go with baseball as far as I can, and if it doesn't work out, then go with something else.
That's the best attitude to have. But
the H12 Prep Baseball Report. Visit the H12 Sports Academy off of Old Highway 80 in El Cajon. Get lessons from top local instructors. Use our team workout and cage facility specials, newly renovated, for baseball and softball. Plus, have your performance metrics analyzed using patented technology in HitTrax. That's the H12 Sports Academy off of Old Highway 80 in El Cajon. Call Scott Hoppy Hopgood at 619-328-1412. That's the H12 Sports Academy in El Cajon. Well, Dave, I want to turn our attention now to the final league standings and the playoff picture heading into the playoff pairings. A lot of you will see this podcast after the pairings are set tomorrow. We don't even know going in here. It's Friday night, and although some of the things have settled in the power rankings, we kind of got an idea of what's going to be going on with the postseason. Quickly, let's review. The Helix Highlanders won the big showdown over the Granite Hills Eagles on Thursday, and I got the dinner from Dave on that one as the Helix outlasted Granite Hills 9-4. Carlos Sukita had 4 RBI, and the Scotties won on Senior Day to capture the Hills League Championship by 2 games over Granite Hills and Grossmont. No disrespect to my Foothillers and my Eagles, but Helix wins it by 2 games in what turned out to be an extremely tough league.
You know, and that's what's amazing about the whole thing is it was such an up and down league all season long, and the way that Helix was at the midpoint of the season, Helix was their offense was, I wouldn't say stagnant, but they weren't dominating, and they weren't at the offensive, and also on the mound they were giving up quite a few hits. So I was a little concerned that the Highlanders might have quite a bit of competition, especially with the Hillers at the midpoint of the season, and with Granite coming around towards the most important part of the season, towards the end. But I think Helix is red hot right now, and I think that they are going to be the team to beat. Zoe Richardson, he's been just fantastic. And then Zamora, he's been pitching his tail off. I mean, that kid, not only on the mound, but hitting as well. And then you mentioned the Keto, the home run that he hit yesterday. And then I mean, you could name all of them. Brandon Peterson has been phenomenal. I mean, he went 4 for 4 yesterday.
I thought the seniors really came through. Guys like Zach Owens came up big. Austin Kretschmar has been huge. I mean, right now, Helix is in a good group. I challenge you to call them a favorite in the open division, but I'm certainly not against it. They had to win 3 games this week, not only against the Eagles, but also that game against the Santana Sultans. The game back from April 10th that was tied at 7-7. They came back, played the 10th inning. Helix won the game 8-7. Helix heading into the postseason in the open division. Maybe towards the bottom, but their ranking was rising fast with some of these victories over these tough Grossmont Hills League teams, which actually increased their strength of schedule rating. So we're going to see what happens in the morning when those pairings come out. The Eagles, all credit to them. They came on so strong. They were mired a little bit in 3rd place behind those 2 teams. They earned the 2nd place tie with the Foothillers. They forced that deciding game on Thursday, which would have allowed them to share the crown with Helix. Clay Fordham pitched a complete game and drove in a run against El Capitan on Tuesday. Granite Hills Dave appears to be a top 4 seed in Division 1.
You know what? That's something that, and I've spoke on it the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to keep touching on it because I have full belief that the Eagles truly have 3 of the top pitchers on their staff. And I'll never forget the quote that James Davis had at the beginning of the season. He said, "We have the offense, we have the capable defense, but I'm a little leery to see what we have as far as a pitching staff." And now that you look at it, I mean, most people were thinking, okay, yeah, they got Trevor Hazelhurst, so they'll be all set. But the rest of their rotation is kind of iffy. But now you have Clay Fordham starting. You have Jake Fenn starting. And not only are they starting, but all 3 of them can hit. So, I mean, just for those 3 kids there, I think that gives, and the pitching ability, and to be able to go 6 or 7 innings, I think that with that offense, it gives the Eagles a huge edge. And I think that not only because I am a former Eagle, but I still think that they have one of the best chances in Division 1 going into the playoffs.
Well, it should be noted, the Eagles won the Division 1 championship 2 years ago. Last year's Division 1 champion, the Grossmont Foothillers. The Grossmont Foothillers won their game against Santana 2-1 on Senior Day on Thursday. Senior Chris Giovengo, our pal from the show, he got a walk-off base hit, and Jack Hyde pitched a complete game for his 7th win of the season. The Foothillers could be the top seed in the Division 1 playoffs when the pairings are announced tomorrow. So incredible. The Granite Hills could be number 4. Grossmont could be number 1. Dave, Grossmont's got as big a chance as the Eagles, despite your biased opinion.
You know, I do, and Al, and I tell that too. Coach Jordan Abruzzo has done fantastic with those guys over at Grossmont. There's just too many to name, but for instance, Jesse Garcia is just a home run machine. I mean, just, what was it, 2 weeks ago, or last week it actually was, back-to-back days, 2 home runs each day. And some credit, which he actually gave it to Hoppy for as far as his power and his hitting ability. He's using that back leg, more of his torso, so he's increased his batting strength. But let's not just talk about Jesse Garcia. Let's talk about Joe. He just came on as of recently after that elbow issue, and he's come on pretty strong. Got a little roughed up the other day, but Jack Hyde, we can see now why USD wants them pitching for their school, because Jack Hyde, he's got a mean fastball and a mean slider that they're interested in. We can see why. And they'll still have to wait another year, though. And I'm sure they'll be interested to watch the Foothillers in the playoffs.
You mentioned Joe Williams, and I think that just adds to the pitching depth. He might not be, he was called on to start that game, so maybe that's why he got touched up a little bit, but he's definitely got a contributing role in the Foothillers push in Division I postseason. Fourth place Santana, they're also ticketed for the Division I playoffs, and we should mention that Ben Hart and Landon Wood did a great job limiting Grossmont's offense in that 2-1 game on Thursday. The crosstown rivals of the West Hills Wolfpack are in the playoffs because they're in Division One and they're at the bottom of the playoff ladder. But I think that they have a chance. You know, some guys from the Sultans, Drew.
Yeah, Landon Wood. I played with him on a travel ball team a couple years ago. So he was a good pitcher, really good hitter.
Yeah, in fact, he's really had a terrific season. If you look at his statistics, among the best players in the East County for sure. I think because of their situation in the Grossmont Hills League and the fact that they're planted so low, Dave, in their division, that they might be laying in the weeds, so to speak, and they have to be considered a sleeper in their road opener in the Division One playoffs.
And what did I say? Quite a few times this season, Ramon, that Santana was going to be exactly that they were going to be the sleeper, and they showed me in that the way they played against the Helix Highlanders. All 3 times that they played them, they played them tough, and for that reason, I mean, the red-hot Highlanders, an offense like that, and to be able to hold them down the way that they did, I think exactly that you talk about Landon, but let's not forget about the Glowacki brothers as well. You know, they are a young team, but they've been spectacular, especially on the mound. And then also Ben Hart. I mean, we can't forget about him as well. I think that team next year, they are young. They're going to just get better. But I do think that they're going to win their first playoff game when it comes CIF time here shortly. I don't know what their seed's going to be, but they're going to be one of those dangerous spoilers for sure.
Well, I have my thoughts on where they might land, and they're probably going to go, I'm thinking, to North County to open the playoffs, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, you talk about Drew, some young baseball talent out in Santee. Tyler Glowacki is definitely going to be one of the best players in the Grossmont Conference for years to come. It appears El Capitan has missed the postseason despite playing what turned out to be the second toughest schedule in Division II. But they did close out the campaign with a 4-3 non-league win over Kearney on Thursday as Blake Payton singled home the winning run in the bottom of the 7th inning, and he also got the victory on the mound with 4 innings of relief.
You know, I want to touch on something that, and we don't know if that was the case or not, or if somebody was just trying to be silly, but a little bird or maybe a little eagle, a little hawk, told me that the other night that it may not have even been Blake Payton that was actually pitching the other day against the Granite Hills Eagles. I don't know for sure. I was not covering that game at the time, but some were saying it was a freshman, and if it was, he had a heck of a day. He led the team in hits and got touched up a little bit on the mound, but the way Blake has been all season, definitely one of those all-stars, if you will, and most valuable player for the Vaqueros, for sure. And for them to miss the playoffs, like you said, the strength of schedule, they just didn't have the offensive power, nor the pitching staff. I mean, he was the Vaqueros, I hate to say, plain and simple.
Yeah, I'm sure El Cap definitely has their own young talent in freshman Connor Christ. He really looks like a good-looking young pitcher and pitched very well in that game. So, over in the Valley League, Horsemen closed out their championship season with another pair of victories to finish 14-1. Those 14 victories came in a row after the season opening, the league season opening loss to the Steel Canyon Cougars. The Norsemen are a sure sleeper, rated near the bottom of the Division II seedings, but they have a serious 1-2 pitching duo in senior Tanner Smith and I only want to say emerging sophomore left-hander Joseph Ingracia. He right now statistically is one of the best pitchers in the entire county.
I mean, the Norsemen are just on one of those runs that they can't be stopped. However, there's always teams like that are trying to have a almost an undefeated season. Let's just shift it over just for a minute, just for a comparison of one of the best New England Patriot teams that they were going for the undefeated season, and then they took a loss to one of the lesser teams, and that could very well be a possibility.
Well, we shall see. Tanner Smith, we expected him to be great, and he was, with a 1.46 ERA, but Ingracia finished the regular season with 7 wins and a 0.99 ERA. And guys, I don't have to tell you what happened in Colton on that day, but just talk about what Joseph's stuff was like on that day. And I guess there was some electricity for the Norsemen. You guys didn't get a hit that day, but kudos to him. What do you think about Joseph Ingracia?
Yeah, he was a great pitcher. He has got good stuff. He was definitely on when we played him.
And kind of like you, he's young still, Drew, and he's not the most physically imposing guy out there, but he's a left-hander. And what was he doing right that day?
He was mixing his pitches really well. He was keeping us off balance, and I don't know, we just couldn't really figure him out.
Putting these guys on the spot. Hey, you guys got no hit on that day, but there's no doubt it was not a fluke. Ingracia is a top-looking prospect here in the East County. The Norsemen also have some hot bats. Jacob Barba, Jonas Sinclair, Kyle Casper, all part of a lineup hitting .325 heading into the playoffs. The Steel Canyon Cougars were the only team to beat the Valhalla Norsemen in league, but as we talked about, their strength of schedule will leave them out of the postseason despite a 17-11 record and a 12-3 league record. Can you imagine that?
Terrible.
In fact, the Cougars ended up with the weakest schedule in Division II, and that's why they're not going to the playoffs. And it's too bad, really, Dave. I mean, look at some of the players that are going to miss out, opponents that you guys faced, Colton, that are going to miss out on the postseason. I think we all can agree these guys are top-notch players this year that could easily win a game or two in the playoffs. Trevor Back, Ivan Canales, Aaron Taylor, Billy Tellis, Matthew Brinkmeyer, 20 stolen bases this season. The team hit nearly .360 and had an ERA over 2.5, Dave.
You know, I think somehow I just think that they were robbed. I know the whole strength of schedule thing, but you know what? They were a 100% team, and everybody on that squad contributed to every single one of those wins. And to win 17 games and to lose 11, I mean, come on. I mean, CIF officials, a team like this should definitely, create a wild card round, if you will, or something like that, because I think it's absolute highway robbery as far as this reporter is concerned. I mean, like you mentioned, Trevor Back, I mean, how many complete games did he have this season? Billy Tellis was right up there in the top in going yard this year. Jesse, not Jesse Owens, I'm sorry. Jesse, their head coach, I mean, it's his first season after Dan Narrett pretty much ran the Steel Canyon baseball. And for him to come up like that, and El Cap Alum, he hadn't coached in a little bit, but he comes over there, and really every player I talked to on that team said that he really turned things around even more than Dan Narrett had in the past for the better. And a 17-11 record, and you're missing the playoffs? I don't agree.
Well, and Jesse Evans, you talked about it. He talked about it after that win over the Wolfpack on Thursday. Noah Nadeau, he returned to form, or he's returning to form, continues to return to form as he got the pitching win against the Wolfpack on Thursday. And I think that Evans did say that, we knew what it was going in. That, that's, as your dad would say, it is what it is. But Dave, look, the Grossmont Valley League is not broken, and I would recommend, I don't know, we only get like 200 people listening to this podcast, so I don't even know how a Grossmont conference works to set a schedule, but let me tell you this, I can only look at the numbers and the power ratings, and I spend probably too much time in my personal life looking over these power ratings, okay? But I would recommend that the Valley League next season reduce the number of league games in comparison to the Hills League. We don't need to go around the league 3 times to find out that Valhalla and Steel are better than the other teams in the league. Okay?
Absolutely.
It can be decided in those 2 head-to-head games. Let's give these teams a chance to go out and find 1 or 2 more competitive non-league games and reduce that schedule. They already have a shorter circuit in the Valley League because they have fewer teams. So let's let those head-to-head matchups decide the league championship. Yes, it may have come down to Valhalla and Steel Canyon sharing the league title this year, but let's consider this. They played 3 times. It was a 1-run game every time, and the home team won.
Absolutely. And like you said, the amount of people that watch the podcast, but there could be key individuals that do. And I'm going to go out on a limb and hope that some of the athletic directors from the Grossmont Conference are checking out the podcast, because I really do agree with what Ramon said, and I second that motion that there is no reason for that. And let's give some of the lesser, younger teams a better shot at having some postseason experience. I mean, same thing with professional sports. Let's have somewhat of a cap on this. I mean, let's not play those three, and let's have an AD meeting. Let's have a CIF meeting and get together and talk about changing some stuff.
Now, all I'm trying to do is let these teams get some more competitive games against teams that they are matched up with, but more importantly, games for Steel Canyon and Valhalla to go out and play someone that's closer to them. So maybe they don't get stuck in this position where the league champion ended up in the playoffs and the runner-up did not. And we'll talk about the Oklahoma Valley Braves later, who are in the postseason despite winning no league games. Dave, one Valley League team that is headed for the postseason and looking for a division championship is our friends from last week, the Monte Vista Monarchs. They finished 18-11, and they're a top seed, if you will. They didn't end up in the top four, maybe as we thought they might, but those kids last week were super impressive, Diego and Ivan. They're probably one of the most fun podcasts we've had in here. They did drop both their league games this week, but one of the games was the Monarchs loss was at the hands of the Steel Canyon Cougars, 7-6, which was a great game, and Steel Canyon needed every ounce to squeeze out a win at home on Senior Day against those Monarchs.
And for the Monarchs to lose twice to Steel Canyon and still get into the playoffs, that's another reason why I think the question arises is let's be fair to all the teams, but nothing to take away from Monte Vista, because they've been fantastic. And then how many years we've had him behind the dish as far as Diego Sandoval, 4 years as a catcher, a youngster like that, and all the defensive plays he made, and he's swinging a mean stick. I mean, you're looking at that, and just the combination of the way Ivan and Diego are seeing eye to eye, the best pitching catching combination when it comes to shutting down teams. And then we can't forget Wiley. I mean, he's been swinging a mean stick. And are we still waiting for that home run from the Monte Vista Monarchs this season?
We are, but they're going to get their chance because they're going to be playing an early playoff game. They did not get a bye, it looks like, in Division 4, and they're going to be against a tough opponent even in the first round. Division 4 features some pretty strong teams at the top, like Holtville, San Pasqual, San Diego Academy, which are all possible second-round opponents of Monte Vista. The Mount McGill Matadors finished 5th and missed out in Division 4 as well, but the Matadors did close out the season with a thrilling 3-2 victory over El Cajon Valley behind the first home run of the season from our friend in here, Jay Harris. He cracked a 2-run shot to give Mount McGill a 2-1 lead in the 5th inning, and Nico Camacho, our friend from the show, he got the win, and senior Joseph Mendoza closed out his career on the mound on Senior Day.
Yes, sir. Nico was very excited, as was Coach Coit, and as usual, I got some great memes. I didn't even get an emoji this week. I got 2 great memes. He said, you know what, he was happy and he had a big hooray. The other one that he had was, it's summertime, it's summertime. But he did mention also that, the season ending the season on a winning note is great. They are a young team, and that it's a completely different atmosphere, but he does believe in a couple of years to change the whole atmosphere and the way of commitment that he had here at Granite Hills. And so far he's achieving that, but he'll have another year or two to work with these youngsters. I think Mount McGill is going to improve each year and possibly be in the CIF playoffs in another 2 years. I mean, they played their hearts out. I think Frank's doing a fantastic job. And at the same time, he's had such a great attitude with his players and has a one-on-one relationship. They talk after the game. He's just an all-around great guy. And I know that Coach Danielson here knows that Frank Coit was definitely one of the better coaches out here in the Grossmont Conference.
Well, you're kind of critical of the power rankings, but you look at sometimes they do tell the story. The West Hills Wolfpack swept the Mount Miguel Matadors and swept the El Cajon Valley Braves. El Cajon Valley, which is seated near the bottom of the Division 5 postseason, but they earned the spot to get in there for sure, despite not winning a league game, and that's because they beat the teams below them in Division 5. That brings me back to my point about the rankings and playing other teams, but not only did they beat those other teams, they beat them handily. They beat teams like Rock Academy 22-0. They pounded Gompers. They beat Winless Crawford. They drubbed them. So the Braves throttled the teams that they were expected to beat. And that goes back to my point. The Braves should play less league games, let them pick up some more comparable opponents, maybe opponents just a little better that they can win. Because when you beat teams above you, that helps your power rating. And when you lose to teams below you, that hurts your power rating. But when you beat teams below you or lose teams above you, that doesn't affect it as much. So I think that a good team like the El Cajon Valley Braves does not deserve to lose nearly 20 games.
No, that's correct, and it's been to say the least, it's been a very frustrating season for Clifton Thomas over there at El Cajon Valley. He's remained positive for the most part. But he did have a lot of bright spots. One of the kids, and he texts me even when they're not playing and invites me to practice to check him out. Just has a heart of gold and loves the game, and he will do everything to become better, which I also set him up with Hoppy, and that's Jesus Favela. I mean, great shortstop. He has to be called upon to pitch more often than not, and playing center now, because of the newcomer, Christian Vasquez, that they transfer from Grossmont Foothillers. And speaking with Christian, he was excited, believe it or not. You would think, wow, he's coming from Grossmont, and he's dropping down to El Cajon Valley. Not the case at all. He's really happy to play with the Braves. He's happy to be one of the leaders already, along with Favela, and he's looking for good things, and he said good things are here to come, are here to stay, and we're going to just get better as we progress. So a very great addition defensively and offensively. I think it was, what was the quote Clifton had? It was, with Christian Vasquez, sky's the limit. This kid is legit. He's going to go beyond college. He's got a very bright future ahead of him.
No, that's a player that the Braves are going to look to build around. He's only a sophomore. So, Dave, let's turn our attention to the Christian Patriots. The Patriots are in the same boat as Santana, looking up at all the teams in Division 1. We know the Patriots are disappointed in their 12-16 overall record, but that's the hazard that the Patriots face going up against the competition in the Western League. They're going to have a tough road game to open up the playoffs, but certainly have a puncher's chance to break through in the opening round with Cal-bound star Garrett Nielsen, his freshman brother Trent, and Brad Jeremiah. The pitching has been decent too, but too many times the Patriots have scored only one run in the game. I mean, that's like 8 or 9 times. I think they were shut out once as well.
And that's one of the keys too. I think the winning percentage also for the innings pitch percentages, the win-loss for Luke Breinkopf would be much better if he had a little bit of offense behind him. I mean, he's pitched pretty brilliantly. If he started, if he came in for relief, big turnaround from the way he pitched the year before. So he's really improved. Another gentleman that I've turned on with Hoppy to, he wants to improve his pitching. So I told him to go see him. He's definitely looking forward to that. Talking with Mike Mitchell and even the AD, David Beezer, what he told me, he goes, I did some more research. They are playing the number 3 toughest competition in the nation. Not in California, in the nation. So for them to have their record, I don't completely... that doesn't talk about the talent that they really do have on that team. I think if they were to play, say, some teams from the Grossmont Conference, look what they did to Patrick Henry, for example. I mean, they teed off and let them score, allowed, 3 runs, scored 17. I mean, that was a football score. So I think Christian matched up in the playoffs. I think they'll at least get one for sure going into CIF.
Yeah, that was a confidence-building win over Patrick Henry for sure, given what happened at the end of the league. They took out some frustration on the Patriots with all those runs. What a ride it's been for the Foothills Christian Knights. They finished second place in their New Ocean League, finishing behind a pretty good Classical Academy team. The Knights head into playoffs with a 4-game winning streak, including a league sweep this week of the White Tigers of Escondido Charter. A couple of great pitching performances this week. Trevor Smallwood on senior day, a complete game with 8 strikeouts. And senior Bailey Lewis had a big week at the dish as well in both wins and earned the pitching win on Thursday, going 5 innings. Dave, the Knights finished ahead of Monte Vista now in Division 4, and get this, they may have earned a top 4 seed and could get a bye when those pairings are announced in less than 12 hours. We'll see. The power rating is close, but they're right there battling between number 4 and number 5. We can certainly color the Foothills Christian Knights a title contender.
Yeah, I was speaking with Dave Lewis briefly, and that's one of the things he was hoping for, is definitely to get that bye. And he thinks the quality of the schedule and the teams that they did beat in the Pacific League and even the non-league teams, that they did pretty well, especially towards the later part of the season. Chris Dollard, when they got players like that back, they had 2 others that towards the end of the season they got back that had to sit out quite a few games. So I think the Foothills Christian Knights are a legitimate contender. I mean, you got who we had on our first show, his new name, it's no longer Seaweed, Mr. Hollywood Jelani Brown. He's been fantastic. I don't know exactly what he's hitting currently, but I know it's pretty close to 300. He's a pretty quick kid on the base paths as well. Like you mentioned, Trevor Smallwood has been lights out pitching. I mean, he's one of the, at least in the top 10 pitchers in the conference, I would say. And I just can't say enough about the team as a whole. That's a complete team, well organized, well coached, and they definitely could go far, I think, in the CIF playoffs beyond the first game.
Oh, most definitely. Dave, the Mountain Empire Redhawks, one other team we're going to keep our eye on, is they appear headed to a top 4 seed in Division 5. Probably 3rd is where you've been talking them up, and looks like that's where they're going to finish behind teams like Lincoln and Southwest San Diego. Those are the teams that look like they're going to compete for the Division 5 championship. They have one of the top players in the tournament in Trevor Elliott, the sophomore,
Wow.
but also, hey, they feature stars Wyatt Mann, Ryan Sawyer, Jacob Nolan. The Red Hawks finished on a 4-game winning streak to finish 5-1 at the top of the Citrus League with Calvary Christian, but the rest of the pitching staff is going to need to step up if they're going to win that championship.
Absolutely, and I think that's the key thing, is the younger people need to, or the younger kids rather, should step up, because it can't lay all entirely on Trevor's shoulders, even though he has not only been pitching phenomenally, he's also been hitting. I mean, I think he was 3 for 4 or 4 for 5 just the other day, and he's knocking the cover off the ball. But you can't rely on one guy. Eventually, he's going to run out of gas. So as you mentioned before, there's going to need to be a couple of others to step up so they don't make a quick exit.
Well, hopefully this isn't our last time together. We got the playoffs, keep some teams alive. Maybe we can hook up one more time. But I want to thank senior Colton Corderman for coming in and joining us from the West Hills Wolfpack, and also Drew RITAYIK, the younger player from the Wolfpack, sophomore. We're going to see more from him in the years to come. And that's going to do it for us on the H12 Prep Baseball Report. And thanks to Carl Danielson and the Granite Hills Multimedia Journalism Department down here for hosting us in their great studio. Also, thanks to our sponsors, H12 Sports Academy off of Old Highway 80 in El Cajon. Go see Hoppy Hopgood down there. Al's Sports Shop, Nicolosi's Italian Restaurant, sponsor of the East County Sports Athlete of the Week, Retro Sports, and our new sponsor, American General. Thanks for joining us on the H12 Prep Baseball Report.